This crazy car is my Nova, a 70s icon that 2 weeks ago I found abandoned in the undergrowth. And in today's episode, we are completely redesigning it. Or should I say, you are. Now, this is where you guys come in. On that note, I now know how the Nova came to be abandoned, and it's a crazy story. But let me catch you up. 2 weeks ago, I found this Nova abandoned. It had been forgotten for 30 years, and I knew I had to have it. We pulled it from its grave and got it home. Step one was cleaning, getting off the decades and decades of dirt and grime, but the interior had to be the highlight. There was so much growing in it, it was a fully natural environment. Once we'd cleaned it up, we tried to get it to run, but the engine was seized solid. But after a lot, and I mean a lot, of patience and hard work, it ran. And then it drove. And after 30 years, it was coming back to life. And it's amazing thinking everything the car has been through and it's still holding on and fighting for life. Now, you guys made yourself clear. A full restoration is what you want. And I agree. For me, the next natural step is a full mechanical overhaul. And I've ordered tons and tons of parts. But due to the weirdness of the car and the engine, they're coming from all over the world. And they're taking a little bit of time. So next week, you'll see this car fully mechanically overhauled and flying down the road. Hopefully. Which is an equally exciting and scary thought. As I was waiting for the parts, my mind went on to the body. All the work that we needed to do, and all the parts that were missing. So in this episode, with your help, we are going to completely redesign this thing. And then hopefully we'll be ready to 3D print our finalised body panels, and bring this Nova body back to its former glory. So, let's see what we're working with. Undoubtedly, this is a very cool looking car, but there's a few problems we need to address and a few ways I think we can make it better. At the top of that list is the lack of rear bumper, exposing our peppy little Alfa to the elements, and overall making it look a bit like a beach buggy. Now, finding an original bumper is near on impossible, especially as mine is an early Mark I. Now, over the years, people have got creative. Very creative. But sometimes it works, and I think now it's our turn to give it a shot. Next up is cooling. Now, having a water-cooled engine at the back of a car can be problematic, and even though we've got a new fan and radiator on the way, it won't be enough to cool this thing down. I'm thinking we use these air ducts to capture air and throw it back to the radiator. But right now, they're quite smooth, and they're not going to capture the volume of air that we need to cool this thing properly. So I think the solution is to create an intake that slots over and allows us to capture more air and more effectively cool the engine down. And finally, I think there are just a couple of design points we might be able to improve upon. Like this. Notice how the front wings are really wide and very smooth. In contrast, look at the back wings. They sort of just stop. It's very abrupt and doesn't feel quite as cool as the rest of the car. Maybe a rear bumper and wider wheels will solve this. But check out this one. This has a slight extension at the rear end and, well, it looks pretty damn cool. But this is all up for debate. Maybe we'll even bring back that Countach rear spoiler. Now is the time to really think about this stuff, and you the viewers are going to have the final vote. But one thing's for sure, we want to get this right. Especially before I spend 50 to 100 hours on bodywork, we need a clear direction. Now usually at this point I'd already have the expanding foam out and I'd be carving away at a masterpiece. But for this build I want to do something slightly different. I want to 3D print the body panels. So that means we need to 3D scan this whole car. I've never done anything like this before, so I reached out to RevoPoint, who are a known company for scanners, and I said, would you send me one? And well, they said yes. They sent over their Morocco Plus, which is basically an all-in-one scanner. It's got the scanner, it's got the computer, it's got everything all in one unit. And with something high-tech like this, I had to call my friend Isaac to help teach me the ropes. As Isaac read the instructions, I started pressing buttons, hoping for the best. This thing's pretty crazy seeing as it's an all-in-one system. Apparently you can scan as large as a helicopter. But if you're a beginner, you should probably start small. So we're starting with a car. We did do a little test run on the vent opening and it was super impressive. Having not used something like this at all before and doing it in complete broad daylight, it just started picking up the whole profile of the car and mapping it out. The next thing we did was cover the car in coded targets and markers. These are basically like little landmarks for the scanner to track during scanning. They help trace the movement of the object or the scanner and make it easier for the computer to stitch it all together. You don't actually need to use these, but for something this large it seems sensible. After a few test runs and totally covering the Nova in space age acne, we are about ready to go. Maybe I'm crazy, but I actually thought this looked really, really cool. It was sort of like a cyberpunk livery or a digital camo sort of vibe. But don't worry, it's not staying, even though I sort of want it to. To give you a slightly better idea, the scanner shoots out infrared light or structured light patterns. The targets and the markers are super reflective, which makes the light data more accurate. For the first stage of scanning, I needed to move this into a slightly more shady environment. Ideally, do it inside, but my garage was full. At this moment, I was really regretting buying such a cheap fuel pump. And finally, I put on these scale bars, which helps the scanner understand how big the object truly is and where it sits in space. Now it is finally time to scan the Nova. The first step is to go around the car and capture all of the markers and the point clouds. This basically creates a digital map of all of the markers that we placed on the car. Now you can do this in single shot mode or continuous. I chose continuous. It's basically like walking around videoing the whole thing, and it gathers all the data it needs. Now, as you can see, after a couple of minutes of scanning, we have all of our markers in digital form. It sort of looks like a map of the stars, but it's a map of a nova. I guess you could call it a supernova. Now for the next stage, I've put the car in the garage as we need a slightly more consistent lighting environment. Now for step 2. We basically go around the whole car again as carefully as possible, scanning it, and it's taking in every surface. You don't actually have to use the point clouds to do this, but it gives that additional accuracy, which is good when you've got something as large as this. And in just a few moments, you'll have the beginnings of a 3D scan. The point cloud acting as sort of a dot to dot that we're now colouring in. After going around the car lots and lots of times, trying my absolute best to get every angle and really fill in a very solid scan, we're almost there. As you can see, it's kind of amazing how much it can pick up, especially given how rough the Nova's surface is. And after a couple of rounds, it's coming together. The whole process probably took only 20 minutes, which is kind of amazing, and we're left with sort of a rough-looking Nova. At this stage I thought I might have done something wrong, but I was pleased to find that actually you just click the one-tap edit, and suddenly you've got a very smooth model. There's something very space age and cool about this whole process. After cleaning everything up a little bit with this cool lasso feature and detecting the holes automatically and filling them, we were left with something really clean and accurate. I was very pleased. The Nova is already super futuristic, and seeing it in digital form, well, it looks straight out of a spaceship. And I have to say, I did sort of feel like a supervillain with 2 monitors. A huge thank you to RevoPoint for sending this over, an amazing tool I'd highly recommend. I've linked it down below, so please do check them out. But now it's time we design some custom body panels. Now, this is where you guys come in. How would you design it? There is absolutely no wrong answer. It could be back to original condition. It could be you like a particular spoiler on the back, a wheel setup, you like a particular rear bumper idea, anything like that, all the way to crazy wide body, something like this. Whatever that may be, now is your time to speak up, as we will actually be picking one of your designs and making it and putting it on this car. So how do you make your idea known? Well, there are 3 ways. Number 1, comment down below. Let me know what your dream vision for this car is. Number 2, after you finish watching this video, don't click off, as what is coming next is pretty crazy. Go to the community section of my YouTube channel and there will be a post there waiting for you. In that post there'll be a bunch of pictures of the Nova from all different angles. You can either print them off and sketch around it, or chuck the images into some clever AI model and design your perfect body panels, or even just draw a sketch of the car how you would make it. And once you're happy with your design, there is an email address in that post where you can send it over to me and it will be officially in the running. And please, no inappropriate drawings. And option number 3, if you are especially techie, email me on that same email address and I will provide you with all the scans that we took so you can bring this thing to life in 3D form. Then after 2 weeks, I'll post my favorites on the community section and we will have a vote. It might just be the one vote, or we might narrow it down over a couple of votes, but either way, we will all decide together what design we want to take forward. Then it will be time to actually 3D print the parts and get them fitted. So please do get involved. This just seemed a nice way for us to bring this car back to life as a community. On that note, I now know how the Nova came to be abandoned, and it's a crazy story. I've actually spoken to the previous owner. So let's go inside and I'll fill you in on all of the details. Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. Welcome to my office. As you can see, it is full of leather-bound books and fine artwork, but maybe more on that another time. The exciting news is I've been able to trace much of the car's history back from the very beginning all the way to the day I found it. So let's get into it. The year was 1969. Sugar Sugar and Come Together had been dominating the charts, Apollo 11 had landed on the moon, and the first flight of the Boeing 747 had taken place. It was a big year, and while this was all going on, in the month of June, a 1500 single-port Beetle rolled off the production line. Now we can assume it had a fairly simple life, as many Beetles did. Well, that was until 1971 rolled around. The unveiling of the Nova kit car had taken the industry by storm, and that little Beetle's owner had decided it was time for a full body transplant. After purchasing one of the only 180 Mark I Nova kits, the faithful Beetle body was removed in favour for this crazy new design. The original colour scheme was black and silver, just like one of the demo cars. Maybe this was the demo car, but I don't know how we could ever prove that. Over the following few years, we can assume it had a fun life of doing just Nova things, going to shows, breaking down, and getting stuck inside the car when the canopy roof fails to open. And then by 1978, the sleek black and silver paint job was replaced in favour of bright red. We're not exactly sure what happened next, except for the Nova fell on hard times. So let's pick things up a few years later. A chap called David was driving around Pocklington in Yorkshire in his blue Ford Escort when he drove past a garage with an abandoned red Nova outside the front. The car was in much the same condition as we found it, and he went into the garage and asked whether he could buy it. Apparently, they had done some work on the Nova, but the owner had not turned up to pick it up and had not paid for anything. So they said, if you can find a way of getting rid of it, that would be good for us. They said you'll find the owner at the pub in the neighbouring village. So David jumped back in his Escort and took a drive. And sure enough, when he got to the pub, sitting at the bar was the owner of the Nova. He was initially reluctant to sell, but then he looked out the window and saw David's blue Ford Escort and said, I need a car, I'll have that. And there in that pub, the deal was done. The car was a non-runner and had a Type 3 2-litre engine in it. And over the next 2 to 3 years, David began rebuilding the car. He resprayed it in red and brought it back to its former glory. Around this time, VVA released the adapter plate that allowed you to put an Alpha engine on a Beetle gearbox, so that had to go in. And over the years, David did a huge amount of work on the Nova, all sorts of customizations, including painting it in the iconic white with a white interior and a Countach rear wing. He built the Nova to a really high standard that many Novas unfortunately never reached. Through his time, passion and hard work, he created a really, really amazing car. But after almost 2 decades of owning the car, after the birth of his daughter and obviously life priorities changing, it was time to sell the car. After placing a deposit on another Nova he had seen at a show, a gentleman called Sean was flicking through the Auto Trader where he saw David's white Nova advertised. He knew he had to have it, so he called off the previous sale he had committed to and gave David a ring. Sean purchased the car and him and his brother went to pick it up. They drove it home, where the car did overheat and they also were pulled over by the police. Not because they were in trouble, but because the police had never seen anything like it and wanted to have a chat about it. Sean's plan was to rebuild the Nova in his own specification, and at the time his brother had a garage, so the plan was to do it all there. Unfortunately, just a few weeks later, the landlord of the garage ended the lease, so suddenly the plan of rebuilding it there was no longer possible. The car sat on Sean's mum's driveway for a while, and then Sean bought a house, life got in the way, and the Nova just sat. Sean was still very reluctant to sell the car. Also, his young nephew had shown such a great interest in the car, and every time he came round he just wanted to start it and look at it. So Sean hatched the plan to surprise his nephew and give it to him. The funny part was his nephew was just 14 years old. After chatting with his sister and brother-in-law, they also agreed. So Sean's nephew got back from school and Sean requested £1. After his nephew gave him the £1, he told him, "You've just purchased a Nova." I joked with Sean on the phone what a moment this must have been. Imagine his nephew going into school the next day, just 14 years old, telling everyone he had a Nova. That would have been a very, very cool day. The Nova was moved to Sean's brother-in-law's factory in Birmingham. The plan was his nephew would tinker with the car and fix it up over the years, and ideally it would be his first car. But unfortunately, as it often does, and as it did yet again for the Nova, life got in the way of its restoration. And for the next 20-odd years, it sat there. Things were done to the car, a few little bits and bobs, interior changes, and also it had a back box put on it, that sort of thing, but it never really got finished. And this is nobody's fault. I think we have all been in this position before, when we've taken on things that we have the best intentions for, but life does its thing. But anyway, for the next 20 years it sat there, and unfortunately at some point it was moved outside, which is roughly where we found it. Eventually the factory was sold and the car was sold with it. And as the factory was being renovated, the car was discovered and put on eBay. And then some knob bought it. Me. And well, the rest of the story you know. We got the car home, we cleaned it, we amazingly got it running, which still surprises me after it was seized. And today we began the process of repairing its body. Next week it'll have a full mechanical overhaul and the future is looking bright. This Nova's life has been full of ups and downs. It started life as a little Beetle, then it was an amazing Nova, abandoned, restored, abandoned, and now we are restoring it again. This Nova has had a hell of a fight and it's still fighting, so please do stick along for this ride. Well, there we go. That is a wrap on episode number 3 on the Nova. I hope you enjoyed this one and I hope you enjoyed learning more about its crazy history, and I hope you're ready to be a part of its future. I appreciate this episode is a little bit different from turning spanners and getting the pressure washer out, but it is an important part of this build and its future. But rest assured, next week we are doing a full mechanical overhaul, so you will not want to miss it. I'm trying my best to rebuild this Nova as quickly and effectively as I can, whilst not sacrificing the quality of the rebuild. All of the support you guys have given me over the last few weeks has been unbelievable and I'm so grateful, so please continue to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all that sort of thing. You are the reason this car is coming back to life. So go down into the comments or check out the community section and get involved with the next stage of this Nova build. And if any of you are experts in 3D printing or want to help on that side of things, well, let me know. The more help, the better. I hope, in a few months' time we can have this thing on the road and you guys can see it in the flesh. Sorry if I'm pulling a funny face. The sun is really strong in my eyes and I'm trying not to go blind. But that is a wrap on today's one. So as I said, please like, share, subscribe, comment. It really does help me out. If you'd like to support the channel further, the Patreon is linked down below. Over there, I do all the behind the scenes, early access. The patrons sort of know what's happening before these videos come out. So if you'd like to support, please do. But regardless, I'm just grateful that you are here watching. So until next week, take care and I will see you then. With my eyes.